Hello everyone, welcome to Invisible Worldz. Today we are going to take a scientific deep dive to the most important molecule for life, that is water. We all know the importance of water, but do we really know why and how it influences our biology? Let's get to it. Life began on Earth in an aqueous environment, and now 70% of all living cells are composed of water. So, the evolution of living organisms that spans over billions of years has been shaped by the physical and chemical characteristics of water. We have to spend some time to learn those properties so that we can better understand how they influence biology. As we start on a journey to understand biology in this channel, we have to gain a deeper understanding of the substance that truly shaped it all. We all know that a water molecule is composed of two hydrogen atoms linked to an oxygen atom by covalent bonds. Let's take a look at how covalent bonds work. The atomic number of hydrogen atom is 1 and it has one electron in its orbit. According to the duet rule, it needs one more electron to be stable because the first orbit or the innermost orbit can accommodate only 2 electrons. The atomic number of oxygen is 8. So there are 2 electrons in its first orbit, the innermost orbit, and 6 electrons in the second orbit. It needs 2 more electrons to achieve a stable octet configuration. What does this mean? Any orbit apart from the innermost orbit needs 8 electrons to be stable. That's why in case of oxygen, we need 2 more electrons for the atom to be stable. Now, neither oxygen nor hydrogen have extra electrons to spare because both of them lack electrons. So, they have to come up with creative ways in which they can achieve stability. Hence, they decide to share their electrons with each other. But hydrogen has only one electron to give. Therefore, another hydrogen enters the picture to lend one more electron which is needed by oxygen. Finally, oxygen shares 2 of its electrons, one with each of the hydrogen atoms. The bond thus formed between them while they are sharing electrons like this is called the covalent bond. Hence, we get a water molecule that is made up of 2 hydrogen and 1 oxygen atoms. The hydrogens are attached to the oxygen atom at a 104.5 degree bond angle as shown here. Now we get to the most interesting part of this video. Even though the electron sharing we discussed so far looks equal from the outside, it is not so because oxygen is more electronegative than hydrogen. But what is electronegativity and why is it suddenly causing a property dispute between our oxygen and hydrogen atoms? Let's see why. Electronegativity is the measure of an atom's ability to attract shared electrons in a shared bond, like the covalent bond. Because the covalent bond we discussed so far has electrons being shared between oxygen and hydrogen atoms. If you look at the periodic table here, you'll see that the electronegativity value increases as we move from left to right of the periodic table. But it decreases as we move from top to bottom in the same table. This happens because as we move from left to right, the proton number increases and the protons are positively charged. So there is a higher tendency in those atoms to attract the electrons towards themselves. But then, why should it decrease as we move from top to bottom? As we can see, the proton number also increases as we move towards the bottom of the periodic table because the same thing essentially happens here as well. The proton number increases. But the thing to note is that not only proton number, the atomic radius also increases by quite a bit. So the electrons are going to get farther and farther away from the nucleus. So they are getting more and more away from the influence of the nucleus. And nucleus is where our protons are residing. So there is a sweet spot where an atom has higher electronegativity in this particular periodic table. And as we can see, oxygen, among many others, falls in that sweet spot. So let's get back to water now. Since oxygen atom is more electronegative than hydrogen, it is able to attract the shared electrons towards itself more strongly. We now have an unequal sharing of electrons, and this basically means oxygen has won its property this way. As a result, there is a partial negative charge on the oxygen atom because the electrons it won are of course negative. Each hydrogen atom is also partially positive as a result. Since we have all these charges floating around, an electrostatic attraction is possible between water molecules. The important thing to note here is, since we have one oxygen atom being linked to two hydrogen atoms, the partial negative charge on oxygen is equal in magnitude to the sum of partial positive charges on the two hydrogens. This leads to one oxygen being able to interact with two hydrogens from two different water molecules as depicted here. Let's focus on one water molecule for the moment. Its oxygen can attract hydrogen atoms of two different water molecules. In the same way, its two hydrogen atoms attract oxygen atoms belonging to two more water molecules. This electrostatic attraction results in what we call the hydrogen bond. And according to Linus Pauling, a famous biochemist and a Nobel laureate, a hydrogen bond is possibly the most important structural feature in physiology. And it's going to form the foundation of everything we'll be studying in biology as well. So far, we have established that each water molecule can form hydrogen bonds with as many as 4 other water molecules. But when water is present as a liquid at room temperature, the water molecules are in constant motion and they only form an average of 3.4 hydrogen bonds at a given time. But how do you form 3.4 bonds? It's almost like finding platform 9 and 3/4 or something. To find that out, we have to understand bond dissociation energy, which is basically the energy required to break a bond. For hydrogen bond, it is estimated to be around 23 kJ per mole, and this falls in the same range as the kinetic energy of water molecules at room temperature. Remember, the water molecules are in constant motion, so they have a certain kinetic energy associated with them. Which means, water molecules have enough energy to break the hydrogen bonds, but the bonds reform again because of the electrostatic attraction between molecules. As a result, most of the water molecules are hydrogen bonded with their neighbors at any given time. But the lifetime of each hydrogen bond is just 1 to 20 picoseconds. When one hydrogen bond breaks, a water molecule can form another within just zero point 0.1 picoseconds. They sure know how to move on quickly. When taken over billions of molecules, the statistical average of number of hydrogen bonds is 3.4 bonds per molecule. We have to understand that each water molecule is not forming 3.4 bonds. Rather, when taken over billions of molecules, the average comes out to be 3.4 bonds per molecule because of the constant breaking and making of bonds caused by the motion of water molecules. Now let's see how these hydrogen bonds create something remarkable when water freezes. In ice, a perfect lattice structure is made possible because each water molecule is held stationary by hydrogen bonds with 4 neighboring water molecules. At lower temperatures, there is lower kinetic energy, so it is not going to be enough to break the hydrogen bonds anymore. So the water molecules are able to form a stable lattice structure. Breaking enough hydrogen bonds to destabilize that lattice, in other words, melting of ice, requires a lot of thermal energy, and that is the reason for higher melting and boiling point of water when compared to some other common solvents. Though hydrogen bond explains the physical properties of water, it is not unique to water. A hydrogen bond can be formed between any electronegative atom and a hydrogen atom covalently bonded to another electronegative atom. Even though this sounds a little complicated, it is not, because it is exactly what we have been discussing so far. The electronegative atom we have studied is oxygen. Typically, the electronegative atoms involved in hydrogen bonding are oxygen, nitrogen, and fluorine. Carbon can only form weak hydrogen bonds because the electronegativity difference between carbon and hydrogen is very, very low. We can see some of the biologically important hydrogen bonds here. It is not necessary to exactly remember all of them, but as with any scientific concept, we have to understand the principle of hydrogen bonding behind all these molecules. And it is exactly same as we have discussed so far in this video. So we are entering the final segment of our video with a question. Why is it important for other molecules to form hydrogen bonds? This is a very important question because the ability of other molecules to form hydrogen bonds makes them soluble in water even if they are uncharged. It means if a molecule can form hydrogen bond, regardless of it being an uncharged molecule, it can be soluble in water. We call these molecules polar because they have positive charge on one side and negative charge on the other. To fully see the effect of hydrogen bonds, let us take ethane and ethanol as final examples. As you can see, they are very similar with just one hydrogen in ethane replaced with OH in ethanol. But ethane is non-polar with very weak intermolecular forces, which are forces between two ethane molecules, and its solubility in water is very low. Ethanol, on the other hand, can form intermolecular hydrogen bonds, and as a result, it is soluble in water. It can form hydrogen bonds with itself because, like water, we have an unequal sharing of electron in the OH group of ethanol. As a result, ethane's boiling point is a much lower minus 88.6 degrees Celsius when compared to 78.3 degrees Celsius of ethanol. A huge increase just because of the presence of OH group and its ability to form hydrogen bonds. Now, this concludes our basic deep dive into water and hydrogen bonds. From a biological context, hydrogen bonds are found everywhere. They are found in biomolecules like sugars, proteins, and DNA, which are some of the basic building blocks of life. We'll discuss each of those molecules separately in the coming episodes, hoping that this video can make you understand them a lot better. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Until next time, stay curious.